My high school ex turns out to be my brother-in-law. Well, that wouldn't be the end of the world, except it is because he's a nightmare and he's trying to ruin my life, so I decide to seek a bit of revenge. This is my story of seeking revenge due to my past injustices. And revenge is important because if we do not take initiative, they will continue ruining our lives and others as well. But before I begin, I want to introduce myself and my story. Hi, I'm Serena. I'm 26 and female, and I'm going to get married soon to the love of my life, Daniel. It's like a dream come true. Daniel's family had planned a dinner to meet mine and finally realize our wedding arrangements. I was excited to begin a new phase of my life. But then the past had that bad timing to encounter me with when I was looking forward to my upcoming future. I bumped into my high school ex, Dylan, and was shocked to find that when Daniel introduced him, he turned out to be my brother-in-law. My instant reaction was not meant to hide things from Daniel, but since things did not end on a pleasant note, I could not understand how I was supposed to deal with that situation, so I kept it minimal with a smile. I know it raises the obvious question of why I had not met him earlier when I started dating his brother. Well, this was because Daniel told me that Dylan had just recently come back from Europe after a decade. 10 years. When he completed his higher education and internship, he had decided to move to his hometown to handle his family's business, and family which I'm soon going to be a part of. Also, it's not been a long time since I met Daniel, who lives in another state far from his family. When I first met him at a conference, we dated for 5 months before we decided to introduce each other to our respective families. Everyone has a history of getting into trouble with the wrong people, and mine was not any different. And finding an ex who turns out to be your relative is such a bizarre coincidence. So here is when everything begins. I first met when I was 16 in high school. When our new session began, he was the most popular, dashing guy, and the girls would just swoon all over him. He used to sit ahead of me in class, and he was my first crush. I used to think he wasn't aware of my existence, but I found that I was wrong when I teamed up with him for a project. He knew so much about me, the subjects that I'm good at, the teachers that I dislike, etc. It was easier to be friendly with him than I thought. I was more than happy to be friends with a guy who was my crush. I was too blind to see any red flags at the time. Or maybe it was just an innocent age to get influenced easily. Spending more time with him to complete the project led us to become more than just friends. Though things turned out a little faster than expected, he was the guy with whom I had my first ever of anything with. Went from a crush to a boyfriend that every teenage relationship had. Like a first date or a first dance at the prom. He was kind of obsessed with his appearance. It was innocuous in the beginning, but things turned out to be bitter when his obsession turned into the next level of narcissism, and his world started revolving around it. And, along with that, his sweet, innocent flirtatiousness turned into backhanded compliments or creepy comments, and his greetings had an underlying sarcasm. It's been 3 months since I started dating him, but it's already taken a toll on my mental health without me even noticing. Or maybe I was dumb and he had become well aware and was taking advantage of me. I started having anxiety issues, degrading self-esteem and increasing self-doubt, and those things that happened to be so fast with my first ever were later realized to be because he lacked patience. And in later months, it started feeling like I was being pushed into certain things that I resented, like going to parties or hanging out with his group of friends. He was so stubborn that if I did not do what he said, he would start to force me. And one day at our high school farewell party, when all our teachers and classmates were together, things crossed their limits when he was all drunk and tried to insist that I drink as well, even though I never liked to. But he was not in his senses to understand that, and this person had no boundaries or limits. He started forcing the liquid down my throat in an instant without even thinking. My hands moved and I shoved his face. His entire hangover was washed away by one slap. He was furious and broke the bottle, leaving me shivering. He didn't stop at that. He even started to choke me, and on the other hand, he twisted my arm so badly that I almost got a hairline fracture. All his friends gathered to stop him, and since the first aid dispensary was available, they took precautions to avoid worsening the pain. The teachers, disappointed by his attitude, called him to the principal's office. They wanted to expel him from school due to his violent attitude and misbehavior towards girls. He was given a week to leave the school. It was obvious that we were on a break. I was delusional enough to believe that at least he would apologize for what he did with me that night, but instead I found his picture, where he was hanging out with another junior. His Facebook status changed and he started dating somebody else. Whatever he did left me heartbroken, and its effect was evident in my academic performance. Teachers were starting to worry about me and sent me to the student counselor. I could safely conclude that she did a great job of dealing with my heartbreak because my grades did improve within a month, and after attending her regular sessions, and after some time, with immense hard work, I turned into a straight A student. I never saw Dylan after he had been expelled from school. I only heard that he left for Europe to complete high school and get admitted for graduation. I moved on with my life, and I was blessed to come across Daniel, who was exactly the opposite of Dylan. Though I moved on. I had not been in a relationship since I broke up with Dylan. I was so cautious and just steady about getting into a relationship with Daniel, but the best thing was that he was so patient and understanding. He was just an average-looking guy, but he was the exact opposite of Dylan. Because he knew how to treat a lady well, his kind-heartedness and generosity swept me off my feet. He was the first guy I ever had anxiety with. The decision to get married was not a difficult one because my mother liked him very much ever since I introduced him to her. He was so easy to get along with that I could imagine the rest of my life growing old with him. I was satisfied with my present and filled with gratitude for my upcoming future that I never cared to share my past with him, believing that I should not recall those unpleasant experiences that had no meaning in my life. I left it there, buried in the past, and never cared to visit it again. But today my past is standing right in front of me as a relative that I cannot avoid. While trying to calm my anxiety, I tried to be optimistic, hoping that maybe things had changed in those years after seeing Daniel behaving nicely on the table. But soon, in a few minutes, my hopes shattered, and I was proven wrong when he passed a perverted compliment by gazing at me creepily, and later tried to act smart by saying that he was talking about the statue of a woman standing behind me. The old Dylan was back, and I was scared of the chaos that he would bring into my life, and at the wedding. Update number 1. Hey guys, today's the most important day of my life. Being a bride. I should be happy about it, but I was rather tense about my brother-in-law and my high school ex, Dylan. He's already started turning my fears into reality, so please suggest how to deal with such a toxic ex. I was desperately hoping for things to turn out alright, without much drama. All the ceremonies went peacefully, and I never left the side of Daniel or Mom, just to save myself from bumping into Dylan. But the only thing that left me with anticipation of, chaos, was Dylan standing along with Daniel as a groomsman during the ring ceremony and just smirking at me. I didn't even look back at him. I just focused on my present and future, my husband, Daniel. I could not imagine what Dylan was thinking or what he might do for the rest of the few hours. Then the toast began. Everyone came up and wished us luck for our marriage, and I got a hint when Dylan smiled and made a toast with the comments about my utter dislike of alcohol. His random references to the past confused the crowd, but thankfully Daniel brushed it off, saying that we were both classmates and it was a long time ago that he was getting nostalgic. So no one took his comments seriously, and thankfully it was over. With our first wedding dance and then the cake cutting, all the ceremonies were completed without any trouble, and I was grateful for it. I was finally relieved when I saw my honeymoon tickets with Daniel. I could not wait to get rid of Dylan and be with Daniel. I made a promise to myself to make the most of my honeymoon period, which could make my bond stronger than ever with Daniel, and ensure that no third person like Dylan could dare threaten my marriage. I enjoyed the best period of my life and never wanted my honeymoon to end. I tried to convince Daniel that we should move into our separate apartments since he was already well off, but he said that his house, or rather mansion, is huge enough that we could have our own space, even if we lived with our entire family.
Daniel had a joint family, and since he lived far away from his state, he finally got a chance to live his own house. He had his mom, dad, and brother living there, and his dad and him, who handled the business, go to the office together. And when I reached his place, he was right. His mansion could easily incorporate all of us without hindering privacy. I was happy to find that Dylan had already left for his office, but after living there for the first few days, as I was scared about sharing the same roof with Dylan, I would end up constantly bumping into him, which was less likely to be possible considering the space in the house. But I still dreaded his presence in my life, and most importantly in Daniel's, since they both go to the same office. And I was right about him, because Dylan made sure to present around me by making unnecessary excuses like asking for a coffee, bumping into me in the kitchen while cooking, or trying to pass snide remarks on my outfits, in the absence of the people around, of course. And not only that, he tried to tease me by constantly making random references to the past and presence of people around, like commenting on how my taste changed or how things changed about me. I tried to brush it off repeatedly, but I sensed somewhere deep down that it had started affecting Daniel, even though he refused to show it. Even though I tried my best to make things good with Daniel, the grudges started seeding with him. So I made a decision to share every bit of my past about me and Dylan with Daniel, before he would manipulate him or fabricate any lies to create further misunderstandings. But maybe luck was not on my side, because when I went to talk to Daniel, I saw Dylan with a bunch of flowers and thanking me for gifting him, and he handed me earrings as a so-called return gift. It was Dylan's birthday. Before I could refuse, I had not given him anything. My mother-in-law, who was already impressed, complimented me for being such a considerate daughter-in-law. Everyone looked so happy that I could not dare to speak up to spoil things. Daniel did not say anything and left quietly. I tried to talk to Daniel, but he was too upset to listen to anything, and I was scared of losing the only opportunity to talk to him before Dylan would lie to him. I told him, in short, Dylan and I had a past. He was my ex-boyfriend from high school, and I was the reason he got expelled, because of which he had to move to Europe. Before I could tell him further about the reason for our breakup, he shut me off and asked for some time alone. I knew the moment was not right, but I could not delay it because it would be worse if he knew about my past through Dylan instead of me. I was already losing hope that my love would be lost in the brotherhood between my current husband and my past brother-in-law. Update number 2. Hey guys, please suggest to me how I should teach him a lesson. It would certainly help me. Well, I was already dreading my marriage falling apart due to Dylan's evil plotting. I was furious with Dylan and wanted to warn him about his misdeeds, so I tried to find the right moment when I could warn him in private without getting notified by anyone. But in my search for the right moment, I found him distracted. For the last few days, I was glad he stopped paying attention to me and to my life, but he was found stuck somewhere else. I could not leave him without paying for it because he cannot just ruin someone's life without consequences. Curious to know that I could use something further against him to save myself, I started to keep an eye on him. I found out that he was dating somebody but in private, since he doesn't need to hide things from his family because my mother-in-law was already waiting for him to get married and none of my in-laws would have an issue with him bringing his girlfriend home or introducing them to us. Neither they're conservative enough to object to his casual hookup, so he might need to hide from it even though Daniel was aware of his such behavior. But this seemed a little different, because he looked a little tense and anxious. He frequently skipped his meetings or work, and I was out somewhere else. Doesn't stay home or sleep at night, and I decided to follow him one day. Daniel had already stopped talking to me, and I wanted to show him the entire truth. But I wondered what happened to his patience that he had so much of all this time. I discovered Dylan in a small, shabby hotel in the countryside. I put my ears on the door and listened to the sounds that were expected. I waited for them at the restaurant for around half an hour and was shocked when I saw him exiting with a blonde girl who looked like a teenager, walking to the car with him. I followed him till he dropped the girl off at her hostel. I clicked on a picture and the address and found her name. I wanted to talk to her but could not find the right moment, but I had pictures, and they were enough to warn Dylan if he would ever try to mess things with me. Before I could talk to him, I found that some guests were already waiting for us in the room. There was a pretty girl, along with her parents, and when Dylan came, and she embraced him as soon as she saw him, I was confused. And finally, Daniel announced that he was more than happy to have her as a sister-in-law. Everyone congratulated them and happily discussed and fixed the marriage dates for the next month. The rings were exchanged and they were declared fiancés. Even Dylan seemed excited. No sign of worry was evident on his face. I was confused as heck. Dylan's fiancée was so excited that she had already decided on the wedding card that she had printed as a sample to show us. Well, that night I wanted to talk to Daniel about Dylan, but he was already upset. I didn't understand how to approach him on this matter. Thinking of a solution, I went outside for some fresh air, and Dylan was back with his attitude, trying to block my way and get closer. This was the right moment to warn Dylan and pull off the wild card. I didn't have evidence at the moment as I was not carrying my cell phone, but I had the information to confront and question him about the blonde girl he met at the girls' hostel. Angry and furious, Dylan held my throat, which nearly choked me as I tried to breathe. Twisted my arm and deja vu hit me. It was the same pain he gave me 10 years ago. He threatened me that if I ever tried to mess with his life, he would rip me to shreds, and he would not leave me like the last time he did, saying that he pushed me into the pool. Thankfully, Daniel came up and saved me, and he told me he saw him leave while I was screaming and throwing in the pool. I showed him the same fingerprint on the arm that he was twisting, which was already swollen. Daniel asked for forgiveness for not listening to the entire story and believing Dylan. He later confessed to me how Dylan had fabricated the lies about me and him, that I had tried to seduce him and was obsessed with him during high school, how he lied about me stalking him and getting married to Daniel so that I could reach Dylan. He was just so confused between his brother's love and mine that he could not make up his mind for himself. He was in a dilemma and could not understand how to deal with me. That is why he asked for the time away from me. He himself wanted to know the truth. I told Daniel that I would only accept his apology if he would help me seek revenge against his brother. He tried to convince me to hire a lawyer or resolve it peacefully, but I was adamant and told him to wait for the right moment, Dylan's wedding ceremony. Update number 3. Hey guys. I have good news to share. As I informed you on my last update, things between me and Daniel got better, but some preparations were still left before the marriage of my dear brother-in-law. After the wounds were healed, I told everything to Daniel, and he promised to help me and would never leave me alone in Dylan's presence again. He dropped me off at the girls' hostel where I contacted that blonde girl, who was under 18. I tried to make some sense to her about Dylan, but she just reminded me of my past self. I could not let Dylan get away with the injustice he was causing to innocent girls like her and me without dealing with the consequences. Initially, she just thought that I was jealous of her being his ex, but then I used the ultimate thing that I used to shake her up to reality. Dylan's wedding invitation card, where his name was printed in gold cursive with his fiancé. I felt sorry for breaking her heart and was shocked to find out that she skipped her period for a week already. She told me everything about how Dylan visited her at the countryside hotel where she was a part-time waitress and struggling financially as she was raised by a single mother. He swooned her with big tips, expensive gifts, attention, false affection, and lies. Since he was not married, she got carried away. I tried to console her by saying that the damage was not beyond repair. She still has time to get things right by choosing the right thing, and I didn't feel right leaving her alone. So I got her an urgent appointment with the doctor, and she was found to be pregnant. She was just a teenager who had a whole life ahead of her and was suffering from an untimely pregnancy. Daniel, embarrassed by his brother's shameful misdeeds, apologized to the poor girl, and we asked her for a favor, that in return we would help her deal with her current situation and her studies. But for that, she had to help expose Dylan. She was more than eager to confront Dylan after what he had done to her. We both got a copy of her pregnancy report as evidence, and advised her to be courageous and come to the wedding party, and handed over the invitation, which was tomorrow. I promised that Daniel would help pick her up and drop her off. Final updates. Finally, the day has come that I've been waiting for. Finally, justice will be served. The wedding day. I waited for this day and made all the necessary preparations to get even with all the past injustices that Dylan has done to me. The guests came over, me and Daniel were up with our plans, and I got the pictures in hand to display them at the camera screen, and Daniel dropped her here at the right time. I brought her along with me on the stage and gathered the crowd to make an announcement. I showed the picture on the camera screen and introduced the girl to the crowd, with whom Dylan was cheating on with his fiancé. Daniel was supportive, and he also told everybody how Dylan tried to harass me and hurt me physically. The entire crowd was in utter shock, including Dylan and his fiancé, which slapped him, leaving the entire wedding in awe. And I called the lawyer to file the case against my high school ex. Turns out to be my brother-in-law trying to ruin my marriage and harass me. So I broke his wedding and got him arrested to seek revenge. In this case of manipulating a girl to get her pregnant as well. Daniel finally told me that while he was trying to get to know the truth when Dylan manipulated him, he befriended his fiancée and found that she was the daughter of Dylan's client who had gotten the best deal for his company. And it was easy to conclude why Dylan wanted her, because marrying her was just material gain, which was beneficial for his business. My poor in-laws were ashamed of his behavior and had to apologize to the girl and his fiancé, who had to deal with such a betrayal.
Alright guys, so you want to talk about a revenge story? This was it. Imagine just putting yourself in OP's position and having to deal with such toxicity. I seriously would not really know what to do. Well, it looks like OP got this all handled, and at the end, she decided to report his misdeeds and get him arrested. Let me know if you think that part was too far, too petty, or if OP was definitely in the right. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on today's story. If you want more revenge stories just like today, all you have to do is click that subscribe button. This is Mr. Reddito's Stories. If you like revenge stories and revenge stories only, you can find my other channel in the description below. It's called Mr. Reddito's Revenge. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. My name's Mr. Reddito once again, and I'll see you tomorrow. But I want you to remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.